Hello and welcome to the Raise Capital Legally podcast and YouTube channel, your go-to source for insights on raising capital the right way. We dive into topics that matter most to real estate syndicators and fund managers with a live opportunity for Q&A before we wrap up. I'm Krisha Young, your co-host or your host today, and business development director for syndication attorneys, and Kim Lisa Taylor, our attorney. She's actually on a flight right now. So I'm flying solo today with Dallon. Now, before we get started, please note that audio and video from this event will be posted on our podcast platform, YouTube channel, website, and social media, and will be made available to the public. You can go ahead and ask questions at the end of this broadcast by raising your hand or typing it in the Q&A. Please note that information discussed during this event is of a general educational nature and should not be construed as legal advice. So today we're looking at automating investor relationships, raising capital on autopilot with Dallon Schultz. In this episode, the Raise Capital Legally podcast, we sit down with Dallon Schultz, founder of Capitallyst Pro, to explore how capital raisers can automate and streamline their investor relationships while staying compliant with 506B regulations. Very important. Dallon shares how Capitallyst Pro helps syndicators and fund managers attract, nurture, and convert investors using pre-built systems, CRM tools, quiz funnels, and automation strategies. He breaks down the 4 key marketing strategies for raising capital, how drip campaigns can build trust, and why an organized pipeline is crucial for turning leads into long-term investors. We also discuss how Capitallyst Pro helps founders focus on relationship building to develop and maintain relationships with new investors. So if you're looking for a done-for-you system or a DIY approach to streamline your prospective investors' outreach, this episode is for you. Hey, Dallon. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I'm such a fan and advocate of this software, so I'm really excited to dive in and talk more. And I've heard you speak, and you are such a huge wealth of information and knowledge and wisdom when it comes to sales as well. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into this conversation with you.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So can you share with us what led to creating Capitalist Pro? How did this get started for you?
Yeah, so um it's a journey. Everything's always a journey, so I'll give the quick 2-minute brief there. So long story short, back in 2017, I was working as a registered nurse, broke my leg playing soccer, and realized that safe and secure job I had wasn't safe and secure. And I was out of work, and it scared the heck out of me. I wasn't sure how I was going to provide for my family. So that instance is really what jump-started my real estate career. And I started buying fourplexes because that's all I knew. And then I learned about funds. I learned about syndications, and something in my mind clicked. And I was like, this is it. This is how I scale. This is how I go bigger. And so we got involved in some syndications. And then a couple years after that, we realized that we were competing a lot with some of these big operators in markets. And I live in Phoenix. And what I mean by competing is we were all chasing the same types of deals. We were all talking to the same types of brokers. And some of these other operators had way more experience than I did. So when you're in the real estate space, the brokers, they have a list of names. They have a list of names of those top performing operators that they know they can turn deals with very, very quickly. I was not on that list, but I wanted to be on that list. And so we realized that rather than competing with these operators, everybody needs capital. So why don't we just focus exclusively on the capital side of the business? And it's more in line with our strengths and who we are. We're people. We like educating. We like providing value. And so that's when we decided to pivot and just focus on raising capital, which then led us to starting our fund of funds. And so we launched that. And as we were growing that, as we were raising capital for it, we realized our systems were just trash. We had 5 or 6 different softwares. We were using Zapier to try to get them to all communicate back and forth. We were using ActiveCampaignMonday.com, simple texting, Calendly for scheduling. It was a complete mess. And so we found a solution, and we were able to customize it, tweak it, and cater it to our needs as capital raisers. So we built this out for ourselves first. We had no intentions of bringing it to market or helping other syndicators or fund managers, because we thought, like, I mean, we were ignorant, but we thought we were the only ones that were experiencing those challenges. We felt like we were siloed off, we were the only ones, and then come to find out we weren't. And this is a very, very common challenge with a lot of people in our space. And what Paul, my business partner and co-founder, what he and I found that we're really, really good at and what energizes us is really optimizing and building out systems. And we were able to do that within this tool, and that was the birth of Capitallyst Pro. And now here we are offering it to some of the top fund managers in our space. So it's been really exciting.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's like, it's that story, that typical entrepreneur story where it's like, there was a need and you filled that need by accident. Yeah, like you were just like kind of doing it for yourself, but actually there's a need for this out there, for capital raisers, especially in the pre-syndication stage, which is where you guys really, really shine, is in developing relationships. So we'll talk about that in a minute. I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. So I think, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but let's dive into this a little bit more. What problem does Capitallyst Pro solve for capital raisers?
Let me share a painful experience, personal painful experience, and I think that will help convey the point here. We were raising for a deal, and had talked to this investor, multiple phone conversations, definitely interested. He had never invested in apartments before, so there was a lot of education, a lot of phone calls over the span of, I'd say, a month and a half, and we jumped on maybe 3 or 4 calls, just educating and building that rapport. Everything went flawlessly. It was good. He was interested. Let me know about the next deal, and then we went silent for about 3 months because we didn't have a deal right then, which is, in my opinion, the best time to raise capital is when you don't have a deal. And so we went silent for about 3 months. Deal came up, and then I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, we've got this deal. Are you ready to go?" And he's like, "Dallon, I wish you called me 2 weeks ago, because we just invested $200,000 in another deal because I forgot what you did." And in my mind, I'm like, "How'd you forget? We had all these conversations. We talked about it." Reality is, we're people. People are people. They're busy with other things in their life. And I realized that the only person I could blame was myself, because we went cold for 3 months. Now, that's when we realized we needed some sort of consistent outreach, whether or not I was the one doing the personal calls. And so that's one of the main features of Capitallyst Pro, is building out that automated drip system. So now, don't get me wrong. Everybody should be calling. You should always have that personal touch. You should always have that connection. But in between those phone calls, what if that person was getting a value-based email from us every single week? Not asking for anything, just value-based. Not only would it keep educating them, but it would keep us top of mind. And that's what we realized that we needed to change. And so that's where we integrate a lot of the systems, processes, automation, is to help automate a portion, not all of it, a portion of that relationship building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love this actually, because, especially when you're just starting out in something like this too, right? Like, big companies have got big marketing budgets. And so, you look at like a huge company that's not even related to real estate investing or anything like that, but like a big company, and they have advertisements like sometimes 2 commercials in a break, right? Not that I watch really TV anymore, but I am assuming that's still what happens in television, that there's like sometimes 2 commercials of the same company and the same product in the same like 3-minute break that you would get in your typical show. But they have the budgets to be able to do that, right? So for people who are just starting out, or who maybe just don't have those budgets, I can see how easy it would be to stop communicating with your list or your potential investors or your people or whatever, because you're just getting so caught up in the running of the business that you don't end up having that time to be able to market it. So doing something like this, having an automatic drip system is, I think, vital for any kind of company, especially in a startup. And I like what you said about, making it value add, right? Like you're not selling, pushing, come to this webinar, do this thing, it's like, let me educate you on something. Let me provide value for you so that I'm not annoying in your in your inbox, but then you're staying top of mind for these people, and like you're feeling good for them in their inbox, especially when they're bombarded by all sorts of other things, I'm sure.
Yeah, we explain it in a way that when you give value, when you educate, you're depositing. It's a deposit of goodwill. And so you do that, you give, and then you ask. Give,
Mm-hmm.
give, and then you ask. And that ask may not always be for money. It might be an invitation to a webinar, to a workshop. One of my favorite things to do with investors that we're nurturing is make introductions, make connections. So if you're doing your job, really building the relationships with these people the way that you should know what they're interested in. You should know what they want to invest in. You should know what their goals are. And there's times where our opportunity may not be a good fit for them right then, but I know somebody that could. Now, this is, you got to have a very abundant mindset when it comes to this, because when you start introducing a potential investor to somebody else, a scarcity mindset
Mm-hmm.
wants you want to hang on to that person. You don't want to make that introduction. But at the end of the day, if what you have isn't a good fit for them and you know somebody that can help them, if you truly cared about that person, you'd make that introduction. So we make introductions and connections all the time. We're very clear on who we are and who we serve, and it's not for everyone. But because of our networking, because of our relationships, we connect with a lot of people in the space. And that actually is one of the best ways to provide value and to keep you top of mind for people, is by making those introductions. And I can't tell you how many times it's actually come back to us because we took that type of approach. But it's not easy to do. It's something you got to try and put faith in that process. And at the end of the day, it's about that investor. It's not about you. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up when it comes to this line of work.
Yeah, for sure. Any line of work, really, like that, you really got to put that human over the transaction, you know what I mean? And you're right. I love that that's my wheelhouse. I love that you brought up like an abundance mindset, versus a scarcity mindset where this is concerned, because it is true when you're scarce, and then you're hoarding, and then you're like mine, you know, it's like, it's natural for us to be that, like that, because we do have a natural inclination to be fear-based. It's part of our DNA, it's part of our brain to be fear-based, so it's not like wrong, but it's like, how do we shift that within ourselves to become more abundant, so that we can create these relationships and give generously and trust that we're going to get back. And I'm wondering what your experience of that is like, in terms of your giving, what your get back has been like, has it been even more than what you've expected? Because that's what I found.
Um,
I get back like way more than I expected, in an unexpected way. And it's like, whoa, okay, if I had just like looked at this transactionally or hoarded this thing, I would have never gotten this other thing. That's like even more amazing.
yeah. I would say so, because that's just what I believe in. I believe the more you give, the more you get back, but I don't have any way to measure that. And
Fair.
it's, for me, it's just who I am. Like I
Mm,
just give, not I'm not like, hey, I'm gonna give this one and expect two back. Like that's
yeah.
not my approach to stuff, and that's not why I give, and I know that's not why you give either. But I feel like this is something we need to talk about, because early on I was like, dang it, I've been giving so much. Why am I not getting anything back? And when I worked through that, I realized that I was getting value back, but to your point, in other ways. So I don't think it's something anybody should measure. I think it just needs to it needs to be who you become. And one of my favorite books on this topic is The Go Giver by Bob Berg, I think is the author. And it's an anecdotal book about a salesperson that's trying to hit his quota and then gets introduced to a mentor, and he goes through these series of lessons that he learns. And that book just resonated with me because that's who I want to be. And it's all about giving that value and just trusting that some way, somehow it's going to come back. So it just needs to become part of your identity
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
I love that. I love that. And yeah, like there is a stepping into an identity here too, with regards to becoming a capital raiser, right? It's like you might be an expert in real estate, or you might be an expert in construction, or you might be an expert in something else, and now you're stepping into the identity of a capital raiser. Right. And what does that mean? And how do you do that? What is that becoming look like for you? And I think this is like a really great way. We talk about this a lot on our mastermind too. We've got one of our clients who is he's like, I've never sold anything. All I do is just create relationships with people, and they invest in my fund. And so we talk about that a lot, about like, there's this element of needing to get out there and sort of market yourself or whatnot, and show that you've got the goods in a way. But then it's like, what's the energy behind it? And I think that's what you're talking about right now, is like the energy behind it is one of generosity. Not to get too woo woo on here, but I think this is a really big topic.
Yeah, and I mean, people are watching what you're doing. And I experienced this firsthand. I was a registered nurse before I got into real estate. I mean, I was on track making $50,000-$60,000 a year, and then I had to go through this transitional period in my life where I went from medical field to real estate, and it took time. But people were watching. And I had friends from high school that I graduated with that I haven't talked to in 10, 15 years reaching out to me, asked me what I was up to because they saw what I was doing. So people want to get involved. A lot of people view real estate as an opportunity to get out of their corporate job, to improve their retirement, but so many people don't know how. And so in my honest opinion, by not inviting people to go along with you and participate with you, that's actually kind of selfish, because you have a vehicle, you have a tool that can help somebody else in their life as it's helped yours. Now, that's not to say you need to ask every single person that you talk to. I don't think that's necessarily a wrong thing, but provide value. At minimum, let people know what it is that you're up to. And you can do that simply through social media. Our preference, an email list, because you can actually control your email list. You don't control who sees your stuff online. But at the end of the day, just invite people along in your journey. Show them what you're doing, show them what you learn, talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. You're not asking them to do anything. And naturally, the people that are interested and want to get involved, they will reach out to you. And that's what I refer to, and we talk about quite often, the difference between attracting capital and raising capital. If you're going through the process of attracting capital, you start acting differently. You start doing things differently versus raising capital. So that's something that I'd like to encourage everyone to consider and ask themselves, am I raising capital or am I attracting capital? And then consider the difference between those two.
Well, let's talk about that. Like, because you've got a tagline, raising capital on autopilot, right? And so like, what does that mean? Like, let's break that down, and how your
Yeah.
software
So
do.
so raising capital on autopilot, we use that for our software because a lot of the automation systems, processes, things we put into place. I think the easiest way to explain this is what we've seen, because first with ourselves and then with other people we've helped. If you visualize a bucket, this bucket contains all your leads and potential investors. Most people's buckets have a bunch of holes punctured in it. So as they put more leads, let's put more water in this bucket, water representing leads. As you put more leads or contacts into this bucket and you have all these holes in it, what happens to those leads? They just flow out, and a lot of people fall through the cracks. So this is what we were experiencing, and what we've experienced with other users is, before we like turn on the marketing and try to attract more leads, let's patch the holes in the bucket. I believe all of us have the money we need for our next deal in our current database. I truly believe that. In our cell phone, in our email list, previous employees or people that we worked with, alumni, friends from college. I believe we have all the capital you need for your next deal in your own database, but people just don't know how to nurture or to work that. And oftentimes it's because they don't have a good system in place. So we go in, we patch the holes on the bucket first. And in regards to raising capital on autopilot, part of that autopilot, if you consider a plane, right? Pilots that fly planes, they're taking off and they're landing. But when they're in the air, they flip that switch on, they kick back, they talk, they chill. So I don't want to mislead people and say that it's a 100% automated solution, especially with AI and all this stuff out there. People are going to be presenting that, pitching that, making it seem like you can raise capital with no effort on your own. That's complete trash. Like, these tools are there to help you and assist you, but understanding how they work is critical. So just like a pilot manually takes off and lands, the autopilot is in the air. So with our solution, there's still those manual touch points. We don't remove that, because at the end of the day, people want to invest with you. And if they're writing you $100,000 check, that's hard to do just via email or just via text or just via social media messaging. So there has to be some manual touch points. But in between those manual touch points, can we automate some of those frequent value-based emails and texts and maybe invitations to workshops because of something that they expressed interest in? 100%. And that's how we build out the automations and claim that it's a CRM solution for raising capital on autopilot. It's the system, it's the automations, it's the process that people go through. And when that is done properly, you now cross over into this period of attracting capital, not raising capital.
So that's awesome. And I want to, just because this is, raising capital legally podcast, I want to touch on the 506B element of this, right? Like the legal way of doing this, right? Because you're right, like there has to be a belly to belly conversation. You have to have a pre-existing relationship, and you need to make it substantive. And substantive means that you've needed to have, like, legally, you need to have a conversation with each of these investors and get to know them, get to know what their investment goals are, whether they consider themselves accredited or non-accredited or whatever, right? So there needs that like taking off and landing has to be done by the human, by the person, right? Legally.
Correct.
Right. And then
yeah.
And go ahead, say if you have a response to that.
Yeah, and I'd say first and foremost, before you raise any capital, before you even sign up for our CRM, consult with Krisha and Kim.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to start raising capital
Right.
not compliantly. And to your point, being able to connect with somebody on a phone call, that for us, I wouldn't raise capital from someone as an operator. I wouldn't take capital from anyone I haven't had a phone call with. Now, that first phone call we have with people, it's not even about deals. We're not pitching deals. We're not sharing returns. We're not doing any of that. The first 1 to 3 calls for us, this is how we operate. People might do it differently. It's discovery. It's discovery. We're getting to know that person. We're getting to know what their goals are. And then all the information that we're sharing with them leading up to that, again, it's not deals. It's, hey, here's information. Here's what we do. Here's what's a self-directed IRA. What are some tax benefits? Hey, we're having a workshop. We're bringing on a CPA to talk about the tax benefits of real estate. Would you like to join us? So it's very much education, and it moves them through that pipeline to that point where they are ready to schedule a call and to explore more. And that's just natural buying process for anyone. Think about the way you invest or the way you buy things. Usually you become aware of the product. Then you start considering it because you could see how it could fit into your life. And then when you cross over into that decision stage, that's usually when you're getting on a call with somebody or getting way more information on it. And so making sure that people are going through that process and that you're not trying to speed through it is absolutely critical. One, just for the relationship. And here's the thing, I will say, we operate a 506c fund. We can publicly solicit. Most people, I don't know what the percentage is. It's high. I think it's like 80, 90% of private equity funds are 506Bs, meaning you can't publicly solicit, right? So taking people through that process before you even share with them a deal is absolutely critical. And not only taking them through that process, but our tool, you can track all the email conversations back and forth, all the text messages, all the calls that were scheduled. It's all shown right there. So in the event that, God forbid, you get caught up in an SEC audit, you can show that that relationship was built. We had these email exchanges, we had these text exchanges, we had these multiple phone calls. This is when we presented the deal to them. And so having a record of all of that too, all in one spot that can easily be found, not just by you, but everyone on your team, it's critical.
I would agree with that, because in a B offering, in the subscription agreement, they need to identify how they know you. And I think that recently we had somebody have an investor say, "Oh, I didn't know this person." I'm paraphrasing here. But like they were just like, "I don't know." And it's like, no, we actually had a whole conversation about this. Our client is like, no, we actually had a whole conversation about this. You can't put, "You didn't know me before this," right? That's a red flag for the SEC if they see that stuff, right? So if you have a really organized system, such as using your platform, then you can just like be chill about it and be like, no, no, no. Remember, here's all of our touch points, and here's our conversation
Yeah.
when we did this and that.
And I've got a terrible memory. I've got a terrible memory. This happened to us yesterday. We're hosting a meetup here in Arizona next week, and people that have previously registered for one of those events, we tag them, so we know like, hey, these people were interested in live events. So we sent out an invitation yesterday, and somebody replied back. They're like, "Why am I getting this?" And I was like, my initial like thought was like, I don't know why you're getting it. Like, you were on our list. And then I was able to go back and see the interactions, and I was able to see that this person had previously registered for one of our events. So then I just kindly replied, say, "Hey, my apologies. You got this because it looks like our records show that you had applied for an event previously. So this was an invitation for everyone that had expressed interest before, but it sounds like you no longer like to receive these invitations." And she said, "Yep, please remove me off your list." Great. And I removed her off the list. But if I didn't have that record showing me, I would have been like, I don't know who you are. Like, they're mixed in with thousands of contacts. And what blows my mind too, on the LP standpoint, that LP was sending money to somebody that they said that they didn't know or previously met. Like, why would they want that? Doesn't make sense to me. So even as an LP, make sure you're getting on the phone with the people you're investing with. Make sure you know what you're actually getting involved with. And then on the GP side of things, make sure you have those records, not only to remind you, but oftentimes to remind the LP as well, because we forget. And if I was like, "Hey, Krisha, you and I actually connected at a live event last year. This is what we talked about." That might be enough for you to be like, "Oh, yeah, okay, you're the guy with the mustache. I remember now." And so having those records works for both sides. And we got short memories. Like, you can't remember everything you talk about with everyone, and that's normal.
Yeah. And especially if you're on the circuit, going around out there to different events and things like that, like you're meeting so many people, like you
Yeah.
can't. We are not the supercomputer, although we kind of are, but we're only using like a certain percentage of our little brains here.
Right. So having a tool being able to remember and just help you in that is huge. And that's where we really help users.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Like, I want to know, well, I want our viewers and audience here. Let's nerd out a little bit. Because you've given me a couple demos, and it's always fun. So talk to us about like your dashboard and your pipelines and your quizzes, and like let's nerd out for a couple of minutes. Like, how does this whole thing work?
I think the simplest way to put this is just understanding and knowing where your investors are at in the pipeline. To your point, Krisha, when you start networking with people, you start connecting with people, they come into your sphere, they come into your network, you're trying to educate them. People are at they're all across the spectrum of, hey, I just met you for the first time, to, hey, I'm ready to invest that $100,000. People are somewhere in that pipeline. So with the automations that we've already built in, a big piece of this as well is the pipeline, understanding at what point in the journey these potential investors are in, and then making sure that you're providing information to meet them where they're at. What do I mean by this? I was grabbing lunch with another operator, and this operator, they're managing, gosh, they're probably around 500-600 million of assets under management. So not a small operator, thousands of units. And we're sitting there talking about this same stuff. And they shared with me that they send a weekly newsletter out every single week of a market update. And I was asking some more questions, and I said, okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. Are you okay if I push back a little bit? They said yes. I said, nobody gives a damn about your market updates if they don't know how you can solve one of their pains or one of their challenges that they're going through. So they were email blasting these technical market updates to everybody on their list. If I don't know how you can serve me or how you can help me, those market updates just become stuff. Like, sure, it's a way to be top of mind. Sure, it's a way for you to establish yourself as a thought leader in the space, and it's good, but not for people that don't even know how you can help them. So those market updates, that's what I would recommend and suggest for people that are a little bit further along. They know who you are, they know how you can help them, and now you're establishing your credibility and you're letting them know that, hey, we're kept in the loop. This is what's going on. And so, but before that, people don't care. You can't connect with their minds until you connect with their heart first. And so if they had a big tax problem, they were paying a lot of taxes, or they weren't happy with how their retirement was performing and they were looking to get out of their a 401k and get it into a self-directed to invest in alternatives, if they knew how you could help them there first, then they're going to be more inclined to listen to those market updates and that technical expertise. So that's what I mean about meeting people where they're at. But if you don't even know where they're at in that pipeline, it's kind of difficult to do. And if you're trying to remember where they're at, that's even more difficult to do. So we try to optimize as much as we can to take the thinking out of it. So now us and our users, we could pull up our pipeline and say, okay, these people, they've gone through everything. They've downloaded some lead magnets. They've attended a webinar. They just haven't scheduled a call yet. So now we reach out to those leads and say, hey, looks like you've been in our system for a while. You've done this, 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 and this. The next logical step for us would be to schedule a call to learn a little bit more. Any reason you wouldn't be up to doing that. And so we're able to cater our outreach to them. And the further they get along in the pipeline, I'll add, this is where you start transitioning more from out of automation to manual outreach as they get closer to investing with you. So we incorporate a lot of automation. You mentioned quiz funnels. That's one of our lead magnets, and we can share a little bit about that in a minute. We implement a lot of that stuff up front, really to qualify and disqualify people that we're getting on the phone. Because there's so many times we just get on the phone and people just want to learn, which is good. But then you have the same conversation over and over and over, and you're spending your time with people that aren't even ready to work with you when there's others sitting on the sideline that are ready to work with you. So we try to qualify, disqualify as early on as possible, and we do that through these emails, these pipelines, these quiz funnels, these different tools. And probably the biggest one that we incorporate, we refer to it as engagement scoring. So if somebody's opening an email, they get some points. If they're clicking that email, they get a little bit more points. If they register for a webinar, we're going to give them even more points. And so now we start quantifying the actions of that lead so that we can see at a glance how engaged they are. And if they haven't scheduled a call yet and they get to a certain point, our team is now notified, hey, give Krisha a call. and I look at your contact card, and it shows what you've been clicking on, what you've been reading, what forms you've submitted. So then I call you out of the blue. To you, it's a cold call. To me, I'm going into that conversation much more confidently because I can see what actions you've been taking along the way. So for people that have a hard time making sales calls, personally, it's great for me because it gives me more confidence and courage to pick up that phone and call, because a pretty good chance it's going to be a decent conversation because you're already aware of us and have been engaged with us. So
I,
there's a
I
lot. There's a lot I just shared there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that last point that you're saying, because even for myself, as I do business development, if I'm looking in our system and I see, okay, well, this person has clicked on the email, it's like it's a different conversation because there's a confidence there. I don't have to be like, I saw that you clicked on our email. It's not like that, but
Yeah,
it's like,
don't get weird like that.
no, I see you. Stalking. Um, but it's more like a confidence. Like I have a confidence in my own nervous system, in my own
Right.
self, where it's like, okay, I know you've clicked on this, and so I know you have some interest here. And that's what you're saying is like, I know you have some interest here. Like I know this is of interest to you because you've
Right.
you've subscribed to this thing, you've come to this webinar. There's something here that is exciting for you, customer or potential investor or whatever. Like, how can I help you? How can I help you? What is your next step? Like, what are you doing? Are you studying, or are you becoming an investor? Are you waiting for money to come in? Like, where are you at in the process? And how can we help you get there? I feel is like where you would come from, and that's where I know we come from, is like, where are you at? How can we help you get there? you know, Rather
And
than
one
like,
and
give us
one of
all
my
your
favorite
money.
yeah, and one of my favorite ways to go about this, because some people might be thinking like, okay, I see that they're opening and clicking these emails. You don't want to come out to them and say, hey, I saw you open this email and clicked on
Yeah.
this link, because
Right.
then it's like, whoa, how do you know all that, right?
Right.
And
Stop
so
it.
my approach to this is simply, I usually start with a message, usually a text, and say, hey, Krisha, I saw that you've been in our community for a while. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm the co-founder of Capitallyst Pro. I saw that you expressed some interest in some previous document or something. I don't think it's bad to acknowledge some things that
Mhm.
they've
Or
enlisted
like you
in.
attended our webinar or whatever, like,
Yeah, I saw that you
how
registered
was it?
for our webinar.
Mhm.
There must be a reason why.
Mhm.
And then I try to go for that response, and then usually they reply, "Oh yeah, I'm looking for XYZ," or whatever the case might be. And we're constantly tweaking and changing some of those messaging scripts as well. And I say scripts not to like follow this exact message, but
Mhm.
more guidelines of how to generate a response from people. So we're constantly improving those, working on those for our users as well. But that's how we approach it. It's just a simple introduction. Hey, any reason we shouldn't talk more about this? There must be a reason. You registered for our webinar. Webinar registration is great. Everybody knows that there's a registration list, and so you can call people out on that. And then if they attended or not attended, then and you know that, now you can cater your approach to them. It's like, hey, Krish, I saw you registered for our webinar, raising capital. Unfortunately, it looks like you weren't able to attend. There must be a reason you registered in the first place.
Right.
Oh yeah, I was looking to XYZ. Okay, now the conversation's going. And again, trying to get them onto a phone call, because that's where you can really connect with people. Best way to do it is Zoom outside of in person. So
I totally agree. Excuse me, with the conversation, with the belly to belly. And before I get to the next question here, I just want to touch on, you mentioned before that you guys are doing a C offering, which allows you to do what's called general solicitation in the SEC language world. Um, but like when we're talking to our clients, we still encourage people to have that belly to belly, to have that like relationship with the potential investor, because those people are going to be part of your deal for a while, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I agree 100% with you. Just because we can publicly solicit a deal, even if somebody expressed interest in that deal, we're taking them through that same exact process
Mhm.
because it's a partnership at the end of the day. Most of these deals are 3 to 5 years. And if things go wrong or things go south, you want to have an idea on both sides. This is for the LP and GP. You want to have a good idea of how that conversation might go, how that partnership might go. And so just because somebody opts in or expresses interest on something that we're publicly soliciting, we're still taking them through that process of getting on the phone, figuring out what their needs are, determining if ultimately it's a good fit before we accept any sort of commitment from them. So it, in my mind, it doesn't change. It doesn't change the process you should take investors through. The
Mm.
only advantage, in my opinion, that you have with a 506C is being able to throw up a deal and say, hey, this is what
Right.
we're offering. But to be honest, sales happens way before that anyways. So people that think they're at a disadvantage doing a 506B, you're actually at an advantage because it
Mhm.
forces you to educate and provide value, which is the way you should be doing it anyways.
Anyway, yeah, I agree. Like even if you're doing a C, a 506B is creating relationships with investors, doing it via 506B is best practice, I think. So even if you're doing a C, because they're also with a C, they're also like accredited investors. Like it's a different level of investor there, right? And some of them might just be like, whatever, like this seems like a good deal. I don't need to know more than that. It's just money. It's just numbers on a spreadsheet for some people. But for others, it is about the relationship. They do want to know. And I think as the fund manager, you should know who you're doing business with in that way, like even a little bit, even a little bit. Um, well, I'm just going to talk for a quick second about our books because so Kim Lisa Taylor, she's not here today, but she's the founder of our law firm, Syndication Attorneys, and she's written 2 books on how to raise capital legally, specifically for real estate. We've got 2 of them. One is our little skinny guy here. This is like our intro to how to for beginners. And then this one here is more of our desktop reference for people who are a little bit more into it and need to get into more details. You can grab both of our books on Amazon if you go to and search up Kim Lisa Taylor. You'll find both of our books there. Our bigger book is also available on Audible. And you can also go to our website and get a free digital copy. Or you can text the word syndicate, SYNDICATE, to 844-796-3428. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the people who have bought our books. Somebody apparently bought one at Barnes and Noble the other day. I was talking to him. That was pretty cool. Let's talk about the marketing and investor journey. So the 4 stages of marketing. So we've got awareness, consideration, decision, and conversion. Let's talk about that a little bit more. I'd love to hear your input on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you look up any standard marketing funnel, you're going to see some sort of variation of that. And so when you consider that and what it means to raising capital, you need to start understanding what the goal is in each stage and then how you transition that lead to the next stage. So, I'll touch briefly on this. But we've actually created a really, really cool tool for people that are trying to get clarity on what stage they need to focus in on the most. So I'll share this with you real quick and to the listeners. If you text compass, the word compass, to 623-624-1190, you'll get a link that will take you to our conversion compass quiz. And this is a quiz funnel. I know you mentioned this earlier, Krisha. This quiz funnel, how you answer these 10 questions will then dictate and show you what stage in that marketing funnel you need the most help with. And then it will provide some ideas, suggestions, things that you can use and implement, and how Capitallyst Pro can help with that funnel. So whether you use Capitallyst Pro or not, this is just a great tool to know what stage you should be focusing on. So let's talk about the stages for a minute. So top of the stage, you have awareness. The entire purpose of awareness is getting people's email, getting their contact info. And so you could do awareness when you go out to live events, networking events, meetups, You can do it on social media. A lot of people like posting stuff on social media. Again, not deals, especially if you're doing a 506B, but education, content, inviting them, letting them know what you're doing. So in that awareness stage, that's where you're really speaking to the pain points, or what we refer to as the hot buttons. What's gonna cause somebody to be like, I want to know what Dallon's up to. I want to keep following Krisha. I want to see what they're up to with this. I didn't know you had to raise capital legally and there's a compliance to it. So I want to keep following them. So that's the awareness stage. Get their contact info. And when they opt in, and what do I mean by opt in? That's in a roundabout way, somebody raising their hand saying, hey, I'm interested in learning more. That could be through a form. That could be through any type of webinar registration. That could be a response to one of your email invites. Say, hey, do you want us to keep you on the list? If they say yes, okay, that's an opt-in. So now they go from awareness to the consideration stage. That's that transitional point. So in the consideration stage, this is now when they're really diving into what it is that you have to offer. And this is where education really comes into play as an operator. This is where you're teaching people how to think. So in regards to raising capital, this is where you're helping them understand more of the benefits of investing in real estate. And if you want to compare it to stocks, bonds, mutual funds, whatever you want to do, this is where you're getting people to think and consider a different option other than what they were doing previously. Now that consideration, that's your second stage. That third stage is decision. Now the pivotal point there, that transition there, is to get on a call. And we refer to it as a discovery call. So in that consideration stage, your entire goal should be to educate, teach them how to think, keep providing value, but inviting them to get on a call to learn more. Because now once they're scheduling a call with you, now they're seriously considering you. They're in the decision stage. Now they're seriously considering you or deciding if you're one of the people that they want to invest with. And at this decision stage, this is where testimonials come into play. This is where showing them how you're going to grow and preserve their wealth is super important. Because when somebody's investing capital, what's their number one fear? If you invested $100,000 with me, Krisha, what's your number one fear?
Losing it.
You're going to lose it.
Yeah.
So in this decision stage, this is where you really get into, this is how our team is structured. This is how we preserve your capital. This is what we look for in these types of deals. If I was sharing that information at the awareness stage, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. So that's what I'm talking about, meeting people where they're at. Now in that decision stage, once you've gone on a call with them and they start converting over into that conversion is the final stage there. That transitional moment is what we determined is a soft commit. That soft commit could be a verbal. It could be them signing a soft commitment form saying, hey, I'm interested in investing. This is how much I have to invest. At that point, they're now going into that conversion stage, but you still got to take them through that conversion stage. So just because somebody says, hey, yeah, I'll invest $100,000 with you, anyone that's raised capital knows that if you need to raise $1 million, you probably need to have 2.5 to 3 million in soft commits, because when it comes down to actually pulling the trigger, something always comes up.
It's not.
And so just because they're in that conversion stage, you still need to take them through that process and make sure you're holding their hand, addressing their concerns to that point where they actually fund. And when I say fund, like money is in the account. Docs are signed, money is wired in. That's when you can celebrate an investor, a new investor is at that point. And so hopefully by going through that process there, listeners can see how important it is, regardless of where people are at, to take them through that process. Now, some might be able to speed through it or accelerate through it. If it's a warm referral from a current investor, that may not take 6 months. That might take 2, 3, or 4 weeks, but you still want to take them through that process, because when they wire that money, it's gonna make that close so much easier. And if done properly, real selling, in my opinion, takes place in that awareness and consideration stage. If those are done properly, then those phone calls, that ask happens very, very organically. And it doesn't seem as scary because you've prepped them and you've qualified them until they've gotten to that point.
It's so true. Like I've been doing business development for a really long time, and I found that like on behalf, like for my own company, but then also on behalf of other companies. And I have found that where I have the highest conversion, like I had one time where I had 100% conversion rate. It was insane. Like every phone call was a yes. And I was just like, am I really good at my job? But yes, of course. And also it was because the woman I was selling for had done such a fantastic job at that awareness and the consideration part of things. Like she'd really nurtured these people and made them feel that they could trust. And so then once they got on that conversation, that decision, it was just this no-brainer. It was like, well, yeah, I already know that like the yes was already determined, and there was just like sort of logistics that needed to be figured out at that point. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
If you can do those first two things really, really well, then people can be like, all those questions that they have when they want to talk to you have already been answered. And then they just might need to round it out a little bit more, or just get to know you as a person.
100%.
Are you crazy or are you normal?
100%.
Yeah.
And
a little bit
and
of
I
both.
think this is where meeting yeah, a little bit of both, right? We all are. And this is where I think meeting in person is super critical too, because people are having a hard time knowing what to believe online.
Oh
And
yeah.
especially with like AI and stuff coming out
Mhm.
too, it's going to get to a point really, really quick if they're not going to know if it's even you. If
Yeah.
it's you, even you talking. Like I've seen some videos where it's people's face, their voice, everything. It's not actually them. It's the AI. So I believe that one of the biggest determining factors of whether people are going to start investing or working with others is knowing that who they are in person is who they see online.
Oh yeah.
And we're already seeing this. So when I think being online and showing your face and having conversations is a great way to build awareness. And then when you're able to go to an event and somebody's like, "Oh, I've been watching some of your YouTube videos, and how you act in person is the same way you act online." I've seen that accelerate that trust factor. And that can really speed things up. So especially in a world where people are turning to AI and tech, again, I think it can be a great tool, but it shouldn't replace you and the conversations you're having.
That is a whole podcast all on its own, in my opinion.
100%.
It's integrity. It's being integrous. And I'm a huge integrity person. And especially coming from the coaching industry, like the like mindset personal development coaching, because we're dealing with people's most intimate thoughts and stuff, fears and stuff, right? And I have personally just made it like what you see online is what you get in person. There is no difference between those two things, And so people feel really confident and comfortable, around that. It's like, oh, this is somebody I could trust. This isn't someone who like is one thing here and then another thing over here. I mean, there's ways in which we need to conduct ourselves publicly, obviously, that we might not we might be a little edgier in our personal life or something like that. You know what I mean? So there's like room there for not being 100% all you out there. But like, I think if it tracks across, then that's massive for the trust factor. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Okay, so we're heading to the top of the hour here, and I wanted you to spell compass for me again, and I want to make sure I got that number right. So is it COMPAS or SS?
Two S's.
Two S's.
COMPASS. So if you just text just the keyword, just compass, to 623-624-1190, you'll get a text with a link that will take you to that tool to determine what stage in that funnel that you need the most work on.
Great. I'm going to do that. So I've put it in our webinar chat there, and we've got a couple questions here. Pam, yes, the Zoom will be recorded and sent out for replay. We publish our podcast on YouTube and all of the podcast channels within about a week of airing. So just check back then. Okay, so this is a great question, and Dallon, here's where you get to shine again. Is there a demo and pricing for that product, for this product? It's true, because this is one of those products that you need to see, right? You've got to get in there and see how the whole thing works. At least I'm a kinesthetic learner, and that's the best way for me to learn. But also, this is software, and this is and your interface is so cool. So I really do encourage anybody watching or listening or whatnot to reach out. So how do they do that?
Sure thing. Yes, we do. We do have a demo, and going about qualifying, disqualifying in our realm of things. We realized we were spending a lot of time on one-on-one demo calls, saying the same thing over and over and over. So
Right.
we've actually made this super easy for people, and we have a pre-recorded demo. It's about 15 to 18 minutes long. If you go to capitalistpro.io, capitalistpro.io, up in the top right corner, you'll see watch a demo. If you click that, fill out the form, you'll get an email with the demo link, and you can watch that. And in that, I actually talk about the conversion compass a little bit as well, and have a visual there, because I'm the same way. I'm a kinesthetic learner and I'm a visual learner. So just talking about things, if someone's telling me something, I'm like, show me what it is. And so yeah, great question. So if you go to capitalistpro.io, request the demo there, and you can watch that video. You could take the conversion compass as well, and if it makes sense to jump on a call and speak more specifically to your needs, then that option will be there as well.
And I think that your software is pretty affordable too, because at this stage in the game, you know, you're a startup investor, right? Like, whether you are a multi-billionaire in real estate, if you've never raised capital before in this way from passive investors, you're now becoming an investment advisor. You're in a whole new ballgame here, and so it's a startup in a way, right? And what I really like about your software and your company and the way you guys operate is that you're niched in this like pre-phase here in helping people really get super compliant, organized, be known. Because, like, especially if you are doing a B offering, what we provide people through our mastermind program is a pitch deck template, and this pitch deck and an investor marketing plan. And what the pitch deck does is it helps people explain what syndicating is, or who they are as people, but because you can't talk about the deal itself, right? And so you guys have done a really great job of that, like that pre-syndication stage of things, to help people along the path. Because then correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you guys don't do the investor management side of things. Is that correct?
We don't do investor management. There's a lot of other really good portals out there that do that. We don't do that. We're the front end
Yeah.
of the funnel. And the question I get most frequently is, well, when should I implement this? And my response is yesterday. Like,
Today.
this literally, this should be the first thing you implement before anything else, before you pay for anything else. Because what we see time and time and time again is people are so busy and so focused on trying to source deals. All of a sudden they get awarded a deal and they're like, oh shit, I got to raise $10 million in 45 days. And now they're scrambling to raise that money, and they don't have the network to do it. So now they're giving away massive amounts of GP ownership to other people that do have these networks, when in reality, you don't need to be doing that. If you take a good 6 months and nurture your list, people that you already have in your network, if you take a good 6 months to nurture them, and you're able to offload some of that effort with a tool like Capitallyst Pro, now that means you're retaining more GP ownership when you do get that deal. Or if you don't want to source the deal, you partner with other people like we do. And that's what we really enjoy. So it's really something that everybody should have had 6 months ago that they probably don't, because it takes time. You can't raise capital overnight. It's a process. So getting this started sooner than later, I think, should be everyone's number one priority. And somebody did ask about pricing. It's on the website as well. The reality is, if you get one new investor a year, just one, it'll pay for your system for about 2 or 3 years.
Right. Yeah.
That's the reality of it.
Yeah. And I like that you make it affordable for people too, you know, for who are starting out in that realm. This has been such a great conversation. I really enjoy talking to you, and I always learn so much every time we do. So for anybody interested in learning more about raising capital legally, and you know what the offering documents and compliance laws and things like that, you can definitely come to syndicationattorneys.com. If you have a deal and you want to discuss how we can help support you with legal offering documents and such, and make introductions to people such as Dallon, we've got a network. You can send me an email at Krisha@syndicationattorneys.com. That's KRISHA @syndicationattorneys.com. Dallon, besides capitalistpro.io, is there any other way that people can connect with you, or would that be the best way? And then Compass and that number you gave us.
We're starting to ramp up stuff on social. So if you look for us there, you'll see some stuff. And that's YouTube is where we're going to be spending really our next 6 months, putting out a lot of more content and strategy around how to implement a CRM. So LinkedIn and YouTube would probably be the best areas for now. If anyone's local to the Arizona area, we have a monthly meetup around capital raising that we have as well. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn is probably the best place. And if we can't help you with where you're at, then most likely we can make an introduction to somebody that can, depending on where you're at in your journey.
Exactly. Yes. Well said. Wait around that one out. Says not available. I might have spelled your website wrong. Could you spell it for me? Let's do this properly here for people. So www.
Yeah. Actually, what might be better, Krisha, if you just go into your browser and just type it in real quick, then you can just paste the link.
Yeah.
So CAPITALLYST. So there's 2 L's. Capitalist.
That's what I did. IO.
Capitalistpro.io.
Oops, I forgot the pro. Pro.io. There we go. Okay, I got it. I always miss a letter. Okay, I'm putting this in the chat for everyone.
We got creative on the name of it, but the spelling's been a nightmare, so we didn't think through that one very much. So
that's okay. It's part of your legacy story.
Right.
Yeah, and it'll be in the show notes and stuff. And anybody watching can also send us an email, and we'll get you the link as well. Dallon, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it with your super techie background there. I want one of those walls. I mean, I've got a real background here, but I want one of those. That's cool. You look like you're in a spaceship.
Awesome.
All right, and thank you.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for having me, Krisha. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you on the next episode. Take care. Bye, Dallon.
Bye.